The four major schools of karate refer to Shotokan, Goju-Ryu, Shito-Ryu, and Wado-Ryu. Among these, one was founded by a master of Jujutsu, Wado-Ryu, created by Hironori Otsuka. During the early days of karate's development in mainland Japan, Otsuka studied under Gichin Funakoshi, Kenwa Mabuni, and Choki Motobu. His presence in nearly every group photograph of leading karate figures from that era clearly reflects his important position in the formative period of modern karate. Among the founders of the four major styles, Otsuka had the earliest connection to martial arts. At the age of 6, he entered the school of Chojiro Ibashi, a jujutsu instructor from the former Tsuchiura domain. Although he was 4 years younger than Chojun Miyagi and 3 years younger than Mabuni, his martial arts training actually began about 5 years earlier than theirs. Jujutsu, simply put, is a system of combat techniques developed by samurai for use in battle. It incorporates every aspect of fighting, including strikes, kicks, throws, and joint locks. While it is often seen today as a form of jacketed grappling, it historically also included the study of weapon arts, such as swordsmanship. It is also well known as the foundation of modern judo. There are many schools of jujutsu, each with its own characteristics. Some specialize in striking techniques, others in throws, and others in joint manipulation. After leaving Ibashi's school, Otsuka entered the school of Tatsusaburo Nakayama of Shinto Yoshin-ryu when he enrolled at Shimotsuma Middle School in Ibaraki Prefecture. Nakayama was a top student of Doreen Matsuoka, a martial arts instructor of the former Kuroda domain. He served as an assistant instructor at Matsuoka's Kuramai Dojo in Asakusa, Tokyo, and later became his successor. However, after the Satsuma Rebellion, martial arts declined throughout Japan, making it difficult to sustain dojo operations. As a result, Nakayama closed his Tokyo dojo and took a position as a martial arts teacher at a middle school in Ibaraki. Nevertheless, in addition to his teaching duties, he converted his home into a dojo of about 30 tatami mats and continued to run a private training hall. It is said that during his 5 years of middle school, Otsuka spent almost all of his time outside of classes training in this dojo. Otsuka, who had been singled out by Nakayama, was reportedly subjected to especially harsh training. By around his 4th year of middle school, it is said that even when facing swordsmen, no matter where they struck from, he was no longer caught off guard. The Yoshin-ryu jujutsu that Otsuka studied was originally developed by Akiyama Shirobe Yoshitoki, a pediatrician from Nagasaki who lived during the same period as Chen Yuanbin. Akiyama traveled to Jiangsu province in China, where he learned Yuefei Quan and Jiaomen Quan. He then refined these systems by adding his own innovations and creativity. The system is said to consist of 303 techniques. In other words, it can be described as a transformation of Chinese martial arts, Todijutsu, into a distinctly Japanese martial system. One defining feature of Japanese martial arts is the thorough elimination of unnecessary movements, condensing techniques into highly practical forms of offense and defense. In this sense, it is said that Otsuka had the ability to instantly detect even the slightest unnecessary motion, and would relentlessly point out such inefficiencies to his students until they became completely exhausted by it. This is often attributed to his deep mastery of the essence of Japanese martial arts. Nakayama Tatsusaburo was particularly skilled in atemi, striking vital points, and kicking techniques, which also had a major influence on the development of Otsuka's karate style. Within the Japanese martial arts world, there existed what could be described as an urban legend, a technique known as the 3-year kill. According to this belief, if one struck a vital point in the proper way, the opponent would die within 3 years. While training under Matsuoka Katsunosuke, Nakayama once got into a massive fight with dozens of aggressive laborers. During this fight, he experimentally applied various atemi strikes with differing levels of force, knocking all of them down. Afterward, he sought out each individual to confirm whether they were alive or dead. It is said that the earliest death occurred after 3 months, while the longest survivor lived for 13.5 years. On average, their lifespans came to about 3 years. Based on this, Nakayama reportedly told his student Otsuka that the 3-year kill was real. At that time, Nakayama used a fist in which the second joint of the middle finger protruded. Nakayama Tatsusaburo advocated that striking vital points using a fist with the second joint of the middle finger extended was highly effective, and all thrusting techniques in Shinto Yoshin-ryu kata employed this method. This concept was inherited by Otsuka Hironori in Wado-Ryu. In the 36 techniques of Wado-Ryu Jujutsu Kenpo kata, the standard straight punch, Seiken, is never used. Instead, all thrusts use the protruding second knuckle of the middle finger to attack vital points. Furthermore, during the Meiji era, Nakayama Tatsusaburo was already using a form of roundhouse kick in which one shifts laterally and delivers a linear strike at a 45-degree angle into the opponent's ribs with the instep. This kick is said to have been incorporated into the training system of Wado-Ryu karate as a fundamental technique known as the roundhouse kick. Hironori Otsuka was granted menkyo kaiden full transmission license in Shinto Yoshin-ryu in June 1920 after graduating from Waseda University and while working at Kawasaki Bank. It was on his 29th birthday. At that time, jujutsu training was conducted mostly not on tatami mats, but on wooden floors. Practitioners often worked in pairs, repeatedly practicing kata. However, because training was intense and close to real combat, injuries were common. Broken bones from joint locks and loss of consciousness from chokeholds were everyday occurrences. While this training system produced incredibly tough fighters, many students were forced to take long breaks due to injuries, and it was not uncommon for some to suffer injuries severe enough to end their martial arts careers. Otsuka received his menkyo kaiden in this harsh era of jujutsu and went on to inherit the 4th generation of the school. Achieving full transmission in his 20s was an extraordinary accomplishment, offering a glimpse into his mastery. Menkyo kaiden is a certification in martial arts or traditional arts that recognizes a student has been fully taught all the secrets and highest teachings of the school by their master. As a side note, the founder of Kodokan Judo, Jigoro Kano, removed many of the dangerous techniques from jujutsu and created an innovative training system that allowed large numbers of practitioners to become strong safely. Otsuka seems to have been an unmotivated bank employee. He consistently refused overtime, was poorly regarded in his dealings with clients, and was said to be constantly thinking about martial arts. At the time, there were said to be over 800 jujutsu dojo in Tokyo. During his time as a bank employee, he visited dojo of various schools such as Daito-ryu, Tenjin Shinyo-ryu, Shinto Koryu, Yagyu-ryu, Tenshin-ryu, and Takenouchi-ryu, actively challenging them to cross-school matches. Aware that he was unsuited to being a banker, Otsuka obtained a qualification as a bone setter the year before receiving his teaching license, apparently considering a change in livelihood. Even today, there exists the national qualification of judo therapist, Rudao Jungfu Shi, a profession that aims for recovery without surgery through techniques such as reduction, immobilization, and aftercare. Making a living as a bone setter has long been common for practitioners and instructors of jujutsu and judo, both in the past and present. Its origins are often traced to 1619, when the Chinese martial artist Chen Yuanbin, Qin Genpin, who had fled to Japan, is said to have transmitted both jujutsu and bone-setting techniques as forms of first aid. The idea of linking jujutsu with bone-setting became widespread during the Edo period. Otsuka left the bank and opened his own bone-setting clinic in the spring of 1921. The following summer, he encountered Okinawan karate, Tode, through Gichin Funakoshi. By the time Otsuka met Funakoshi, he already had 25 years of martial arts experience and was the head of his own school. In other words, a master of jujutsu. Despite this status, Otsuka did not become complacent and humbly studied the Okinawan art of karate, which had only just been introduced to mainland Japan. Every evening except Sundays, he would close his clinic early and begin attending Maisei Juku, a student dormitory for people from Okinawa. Although there had once been 14 students, all of them disappeared the following year due to the Great Kanto earthquake. Even so, Otsuka continued to receive one-on-one instruction from Funakoshi. It is said that it took about 1 year to master the 16 kata that Funakoshi brought with him. Later, when Choki Motobu and Kenwa Mabuni came up to Tokyo from Okinawa and observed Otsuka's kata, they were reportedly astonished, saying that even in Okinawa there were probably no practitioners who could perform kata so perfectly. Originally a master of Yoshin-ryu Jujutsu, Otsuka had ingrained martial techniques into his body from a young age, so perhaps this came easily to him. Funakoshi's instruction focused almost entirely on kata. Even after listening to the explanations, Otsuka felt that there were many aspects lacking when considering real combat situations. Therefore, while continuing to train under Funakoshi, he also sought out Okinawan masters such as Mabuni and Motobu who had come to mainland Japan, deepening his understanding of the analysis, bunkai, and application of karate techniques. Although Otsuka continued his jujutsu training while studying under Funakoshi, he found karate to be profoundly appealing. In 1922, he was appointed as an assistant instructor, Shihandai, by Funakoshi, which further motivated him as a teacher. Gradually, Otsuka transitioned from being a jujutsu practitioner to a karate practitioner. Even before being appointed as assistant instructor, he had begun incorporating karate techniques into jujutsu, developing paired kata and methods resembling match-style grappling. In May 1924, a martial arts demonstration was held at the Seinei-kan dojo within the Imperial Palace grounds. At that time, upon the recommendation of Jigoro Kano, Okinawan karate was also invited to participate. The Seinei-kan dojo was a prestigious venue used by members of the nobility, imperial officials, and the Imperial Guard for martial arts training, and it hosted numerous imperial and official exhibitions. The legendary Naginata master Hideo Sonobe also performed there. It was a highly esteemed place where leading figures of Japanese martial arts, such as the swordsman Hiromichi Nakayama and Ushijima Tatsukuma, teacher of the famous judoka Masahiko Kimura, also taught. At this venue, Okinawa Todi was allotted only 30 minutes. However, with just Funakoshi's Kusanku and Otsuka's Naihanchi, it was impossible to fill the time sufficiently. Additionally, Funakoshi's demonstrations at the Kodokan consisted solely of solo kata performances. As a result, they did not leave a strong impression on judoka, who emphasized randori, free sparring. The fact that karate, newly introduced from Okinawa to mainland Japan, consisted only of kata was seen as problematic by the judo community, which prioritized practical application. Without training equivalent to randori, its effectiveness in real combat was questioned. According to Otsuka, as well as Yasuhiro Konishi, founder of Shindo Jinen-ryu, who also came from a jujutsu and Japanese martial arts background, Funakoshi was not very knowledgeable about kumite, sparring. On April 12, 1924, Funakoshi, under the name Karate Research Association Headquarters, President Gichin Funakoshi, issued the first Dan ranks in the history of karate. Among the recipients were Otsuka and Konishi. With Otsuka taking the lead, and with the cooperation of Konishi and others, the first formalized Yakusoku Kumite, pre-arranged sparring, on the mainland was created, drawing on jujutsu systems such as Shinto Yoshin-ryu and Takenouchi-ryu, which they had studied. Otsuka further proposed introducing free sparring into karate, similar to Jujutsu randori. However, Funakoshi strongly opposed this idea, and it is said that this disagreement gradually strained their relationship. Given these circumstances, it was decided that at the Seinei-kan demonstration, Otsuka would present yakusoku kumite, pre-arranged sparring. Fortunately, at that time, there was a young man named Hideo Akiba, a skilled practitioner of sword dance among the students training at Meisei-juku. Otsuka taught this young man methods of attacking with both long and short swords, while he himself devised ways to handle and evade these attacks. In doing so, he ultimately created a series of randori no kata, free-form sparring forms. Using the same approach, he also structured the principles of Okinawan karate kata in such a way that spectators could understand them through actual offensive and defensive movements. However, Funakoshi at the time did not fully understand the practical, combat-oriented spirit of traditional Japanese martial arts. Therefore, he could not readily agree with Otsuka's idea of constructing entirely new kumite forms, something that had never existed in karate before, in such a short period of time, and then boldly presenting them before an audience of distinguished martial arts experts. It is said that Funakoshi may have found Otsuka's concept simply too radical and therefore unsettling. On the other hand, Otsuka could not understand Funakoshi's concerns. He believed that all kata in Japanese martial arts were born from real combat, products of life and death struggle imbued with practical reality. From this perspective, solo demonstrations and kata were entirely separate from real combat techniques, serving merely as training methods prepared for beginners. He believed that solo kata lacked the essential elements of martial arts, the timing, distancing, and breathing of actual combat, and that over long periods, such forms inevitably became exaggerated and filled with unnecessary movements. Unless one was a master who had passed through the crucible of real combat, relying solely on solo kata would reduce karate to nothing more than a form of health exercise. Karate, however, is originally a fighting art and should be a highly effective martial system. Therefore, it is essential to train in a way that is as close to real combat as possible. Moreover, this particular demonstration was a public event where leading experts representing various schools of Japanese martial arts would gather to showcase their skills. Accordingly, karate must also prove itself as a true martial art, demonstrating techniques that are effective in real combat. Proving the effectiveness of kata and gaining recognition from these experts was, in Otsuka's mind, not as difficult as it might seem. Otsuka held these beliefs. For someone like him, who had devoted himself seriously to martial arts since childhood, this was an entirely natural way of thinking. The time available to construct the yakusoku kumite forms had been short. However, the history of offensive and defensive techniques is long, and their principles are clear. Therefore, as long as one understands the meaning of kata, it would be unreasonable to spend excessive time constructing such forms. Furthermore, as a fully licensed master of traditional jujutsu, Otsuka did not believe his technical ability was inferior in any way to the experts gathered at the Seinei-kan dojo. Nevertheless, Funakoshi could not easily be persuaded. In the end, it is said that he made his decision only after seeking the judgment of Jigoro Kano, the towering figure of the Japanese martial arts world who had recommended participation in the demonstration. The introduction of yakusoku kumite into karate was a brilliant innovation, and it is possible that without Otsuka's idea, the flourishing of karate in mainland Japan might never have been achieved. Just as Otsuka had anticipated, based on his deep understanding of the mainland martial arts world, the demonstrations of Shinken shirahadori, bare-handed sword-taking, tanto-dori, knife defense, and yakusoku kumite were met with overwhelming praise from the assembled martial artists, resulting in great success. In 1928, Otsuka studied under Kenwa Mabuni, who had come to Tokyo in order to learn kata. Mabuni, who would later become the founder of Shito-ryu, had already mastered a vast number of kata from both Nahate and Shurite traditions at that time. It is said that Otsuka learned around 30 to 40 kata from him. However, the kata that Otsuka actually taught were only 9. Pinan Shodan through Godan, Naihanchi, Seishan, Shinto, and Kusanku. Among these, he particularly emphasized Naihanchi, Seishan, and Pinan Shodan and Yondan. This was because he believed that learning too many kata was a waste of time. The following year, in 1929, Otsuka also studied under Choki Motobu. Motobu's view of karate, which emphasized kumite as well as kata, had a significant influence on Otsuka. In later years, Otsuka stated, "Mr. Motobu was the most outstanding karateka among all the Ryukyuan practitioners I had met. We were on close terms and saw each other often, and I was greatly inspired by him." From around the time he began studying under Motobu, Otsuka started researching kumite matches. However, this eventually caused a rift between him and Funakoshi. It is said that Funakoshi criticized Otsuka, claiming that he was arbitrarily incorporating jujutsu practices. That same year, Otsuka established the Japan Kabuto Promotion Society. In 1929, Otsuka persuaded Funakoshi and became independent. The concept of wa, harmony, representing both the spirit of harmony and Japan itself, had long been in his mind as Wado, the way of harmony. For a time, he simply taught what was then called Todei at his home. However, he recognized that organization was essential for its spread and development. Thus, in May 1934, the Dai Nippon Karate-Do Promotion Club was established, with Otsuka as its president and chief instructor. This moment can be considered the official founding of Wado-Ryu. Wado-Ryu, now known as one of the 4 major styles of karate, was thus born. Among these 4, Wado-Ryu is unique in that it draws from Jujutsu, and it exhibits distinctive techniques and theories as a result. Wado-Ryu was officially recognized by the Dai Nippon Butokukai in April 1938. In the same year, Otsuka was awarded the title of Renshi by the organization. Otsuka also showed a deep interest in traditional Japanese swordsmanship. That same year, he studied Yagyu Shinkage-ryu under Kubo Gihachiro, from whom he rented his dojo. Additionally, through his involvement with the Nihon Kabuto Shinkokai, Otsuka became fascinated after witnessing a demonstration of Tomita-ryu Kodachi. He then researched Tomita-ryu independently and is said to have incorporated its principles into Wado-ryu karate, particularly in body movement, taisabaki, and technique. In 1942, he was awarded the title of Kyoshi, formerly known as Tatsushi. Wado-ryu karate is characterized by its unique techniques and theory, blending jujutsu and karate into a system defined by fluid, efficient, and natural movement. Otsuka described this concept as a ball filled with gas. In other words, it can roll and deform freely, yet its center always remains stable. When pushed, it yields by compressing inward. When released, it returns to its original form. This gas-filled ball represents the state Otsuka sought, a culmination of his relentless pursuit of not only jujutsu and karate, but also swordsmanship. After Japan's defeat in World War II, martial arts were temporarily banned. However, following the signing of the peace treaty in September 1951, their revival was permitted. At that time, demonstrations of kendo, judo, and karate were held in the presence of GHQ officials. Otsuka led the karate demonstration, while kendo was represented by Hiromichi Nakayama and judo by Kyuzo Mifune, one of the top disciples of Jigoro Kano. This clearly shows that Otsuka stood among the foremost masters in the Japanese martial arts world. In 1955, the first Wado-Ryu national tournament was held in Tokyo, primarily as a demonstration event focusing on kata and basic kumite. From the second tournament in 1960, kumite matches, as we know them today, were officially included. In 1959, when the All Japan Karate-do Federation, former now Renbukai, was established, Otsuka served as an advisor. In October 1972, he was awarded the title of the first Grand Master, 10th Dan, of Karate by the International Martial Arts Federation. In November 1978, he established the Wado-Ryu Karate Federation headquarters dojo in Nerima, Tokyo. Karate had only recently been introduced to mainland Japan. Without encounters with masters of Japanese martial arts such as Hironori Otsuka and Yasuhiro Konishi, its development might have taken a very different path. It may have remained limited to the transmission of kata alone, without evolving into the kumite training we see today. In such a case, it would have been difficult for karate to gain widespread acceptance in mainland Japan, where practicality in combat was highly valued. It might not have become established as either a sport or a martial art, and its global spread as we know it today may never have occurred. The technical and philosophical fusion brought about by Otsuka and Konishi was not merely an evolution, it was a turning point that shaped the very destiny of karate. Otsuka can also be seen at the opening ceremony of the Karate Vocational School established within the Honbu Dojo of mainland Goju-ryu. At the back is Gogen Yamaguchi, the de facto founder of mainland Goju-ryu and one of the teachers of Mas Oyama, who went on to found the largest full-contact karate organization, Kyokushin Kaikan. The person delivering the speech is Seinei-kan, Yamaguchi's top disciple, who also instructed Mas Oyama in karate. Unlike founders of other styles, Otsuka is not known for dramatic tales of combat. However, his approach to martial arts and his life's work speak volumes about his true ability. His contributions to karate are immeasurable. With the rise of mixed martial arts, MMA, karate, once confined within the rules of individual styles, has come to be evaluated from the perspective of whether it is effective in other combat sports. While it is meaningless to rank MMA and traditional martial arts in terms of superiority, it is natural that fans are interested in how well each martial art can perform under the relatively unrestricted rules of MMA. In fact, many early karate practitioners who entered MMA struggled significantly, particularly due to their lack of ground fighting skills. However, in recent years, more fighters have adapted successfully and achieved results in MMA. Interestingly, many of them have returned to study disciplines such as Jujutsu while maintaining karate as their base. If Otsuka, who mastered both karate and Jujutsu and fused them into a unified system, were alive today, one cannot help but wonder what kind of strategies he would have devised for MMA. Thank you very much for watching until the end. On this channel, I also share lesser-known information about Japanese martial arts based on Japanese language sources, content that is not widely available overseas. If you're interested, please feel free to check out my other videos as well.
Japan B is a channel that randomly shares information about lesser-known aspects of Japanese culture, spanning across various genres.